So, you want to put your car through some puddles. You want to do some river crossings. You want to submerge your vehicle. I get it, it's exciting stuff. Everybody wants to do a river crossing at some point and test out their rig. Normally, it's a bad decision that is fueled by a mate that's in the passenger seat who normally doesn't own a four-wheel drive, sits there and says, "It'll be fine, what's the worst that could happen? You got a tough rig, mate, you've done all the mods to this thing, just go through the water. What are you, bloody chicken?" And you sit there and you go, "Yeah, I've lifted my car, I've put bigger tyres on it, it's a four-wheel drive and it's in four-wheel drive, I'm just gonna send it, what's the worst that can happen?" Welcome back to JPC, another Shed Sessions video for you guys at home watching this video. I do it for you. Now, if you guys want some merchandise, JPC merchandise, Shed Sessions merchandise, click on the link below in the description. Hold on a second, I need merch in order to sell merch. I need to have merch on the description link below for you to click on. If you guys think that I should have some JPC and Shed Sessions merchandise, let me know in the comments below, I'll make it happen. I honestly just didn't want to be another one of those people that have the merch, but I've had a few people message me asking me about it, and anyway, another installation video for you guys today. This is a cracker, an absolute must for anyone who has a four-wheel drive and takes it off-road, overlanding. You need to have this on your rig. Very easy installation, guys. Something definitely needs to be done. If you've already got one on your car, you're an absolute legend, but keep watching the video now because it's really cool. What you can do to your vehicle to prevent there from being some serious implications to the drivetrain from doing water crossings is a few things. It's a simple checklist, but it's something that you should definitely do to make sure that you don't have issues with your rig. So, number one is a snorkel. You need to put an engine straw on your rig, guys. This is going to prevent water ingress into the intake and into the engine, which is catastrophic. We all know that. That is the main one, and we've already done it on the build series, guys. You can check out that video. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. The other thing which commonly gets overlooked is breather kits. Your transmission, your transfer case, and your front and rear diffs need to have breathers on them, because when you are driving around through the hills, four-wheel drive tracks, normal driving, all of your drivetrain is warm. It's heated up, guys, it's being used. You know, the oil's hot, the metal's hot, everything's warm. So what happens is you go up to a water crossing, you hit that water, and just like when you jump in the water, your body temperature changes, your drivetrain temperature changes, and this causes a vacuum. So what happens then is water or air, and most likely water if you're doing a water crossing, gets sucked in to your drivetrain bits and pieces, and this is going to mix with oil. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, I haven't done a diff service or a transmission service in a while, my oil levels are a bit low, chuck a bit of water in there, top her up, she'll be sweet. But no, that's not the case. Water and oil does not mix. And installing a diff breather kit and a transmission breather kit is a very cheap investment in the more expensive components of your vehicle. Now, this is a Black Hawk product. It's manufactured by Road Safe and it's distributed by the Four-Wheel Drive Shed. So I'll chuck a link in the description below, guys, for where you can purchase this one, a link to the Four-Wheel Drive Shed if you're interested in getting this kit for your ride. Now, let's get started with the unboxing of the product first and foremost to check out what you get for the money that you spend on this kit. And then let's get stuck into the installation on the car, guys. Super exciting stuff. Let's do it. So, first thing on the top of the box there, we've got some pneumatic airline, different sizes I'm guessing there. And another big bundle of pneumatic airline right there, guys. That's fantastic. They're giving you heaps of pneumatic line there to work with, so perfect. Got some cable ties, bag of cable ties, and there is plenty in there. That's going to be more than enough to get the job done. So now that I've used a fistful, enough to sink the Titanic of zip ties, pretty much everything that came in that bag I used. And then we've got another bag here filled with some other goodies. Inside this bubble wrap is the actual manifold itself. So that is a billet machined aluminium manifold, so high quality. And you can see there that it's been machined in the back housing where the actual breathers, the breathers go into here and they're recessed, so they keep a they keep out of the way of all the dirt and stuff that's probably going to be traveling around inside the engine bay and give it more chance of those filters keeping clean. We've got a wide variety of pneumatic fittings here. We've got some metal push lock fittings here. Okay, then we've got some straight push lock pneumatic fittings there. Got some 90-degree fittings in that bag. Got a reducer block there, and then we've got a 2-into-1 pneumatic fitting. Alrighty, and that looks like that we've got our mounting screw for the actual manifold itself. We've got some blanking grub screws there, and the actual breathers there, the brass breathers which screw into the manifold block. Alrighty, now we've got all of the bling laid out in the bench from the Black Hawk breather kit. Looks really good. This is some high quality gear, guys. I'm stoked. Now, this is something you can do at home. You don't need a hoist. This is a non-hoist certified installation. The only reason I'm using a hoist is because I can get better camera angles underneath the car to show you guys how to do the install. It's so much easier than having the camera on my chest, trying to do all the things underneath the car and get all these shaky angles. We are now in the engine bay, guys, and I have found a spot for my manifold after scanning the whole engine bay and trying to figure out where the highest point was going to be, but also somewhere that this thing can mount and I can get all the cables run to it neatly. And I found the perfect position, and there you have it. It's going to bolt straight onto there. I'll have my 90-degree fittings coming off the back, and all of the hose can continue to run up these hard brake lines behind here up into the block itself, the manifold block. The hoses will all come from the back, be nice and neat, and all join into the middle. So that is going to be my position for the manifold, guys. Again, you can choose to put it wherever you want to put it,
but this is probably the best spot in the engine bay, so put it there.
So before you put your manifold into your chosen position on the vehicle, you'll need to make sure that you put your breathers on, and you can even go ahead and put the other fittings on as well. Now, you've also got these grub screws here as part of the kit, which are basically blanking caps. So if there's any fittings, locations that you're not going to use, just put a blanking cap in there, otherwise it will get water or dirt ingress in through there and it completely defeats the purpose of it. So make sure you block all the holes with at least a fitting, a breather, or a grub screw. And like all other threads, just make sure that you start them by hand first. Get the thread started, and then you can grab yourself a 12mm socket and you can go around and do them up. Don't need to be overly tight. Once you've got them sort of seated flush like I'm doing here, you can grab your ratchet, whatever tool you're using to do them up. So that's about it there. It starts getting tight about there, and I just go a little bit further.
Okay, so we are at the back of the vehicle. We're at the rear differential. Now that is the breather line, that one right there. It runs up into the chassis, so it doesn't actually go into a breather block or a breather fitting or anything like that. Basically, that's it there, runs up along here, up through there, and straight into there. So I'm tipping if we, oh, well, yeah, there we go. If we pull on that, the hose comes out and there's nothing on there. We literally just ran into that fitting in the chassis in there. So, guys, therein lies the problem. If the water is up to your chassis height, you're gonna run into troubles because there is nothing on the other end of that. Focus, focus. There's nothing on the other end of that is stopping water ingress when the diff wants to suck air in. So once you've taken your rubber hose off the breather barb in the diff housing, grab yourself a 12mm, and you need to undo this breather barb out of the diff housing, and we're going to replace that with a push lock fitting, one of the pneumatic ones that are supplied in the kit. we've got some big life decisions to make, guys. So these are two types of fittings. They've got the straight fitting there or the 90-degree fitting. Now both of them are the correct thread size, so you could use either one in your Nissan Diff housing, but they're going to be different. So one of them is obviously going to kick the pneumatic air line straight up, and the other one's going to kick it out on a 90-degree angle. Now, this is completely dependent on how you're going to run your pneumatic air line to the front of the vehicle. I have an idea on how I'm going to do mine, and I'll show you in a second. I'm going to be using a straight fitting. Okay, so we've got our pneumatic push lock fitting here. Now, no need to use any thread tape on the fitting itself. It's already got a thread compound on there ready to go. You will just need to grab yourself a 14mm spanner, socket, whatever you want to use to put it into the diff. So go ahead and do that now. Now, when you're doing up these fittings, there is no need to go overly tight with them, guys. Just when they start getting firm, just go a little nip up more than that. Don't go too much more. You don't want to strip the thread or break the fitting off in the housing, even worse. So because it's got that thread compound on there, you don't have to go up overly tight. It's going to get a good seal no matter what. So now you've got your push lock pneumatic fitting installed into your diff housing. What you need to do is grab your pneumatic air line, the big roll of it. This is perfect for the rear diff because you've got a lot of length in the line, and we're just going to leave it the length that it comes in the kit. Don't trim it down unless you're 100% certain of the length hose that you need. I'm going to leave it as long as it comes and basically just feed this from the pneumatic fitting, from the diff housing, all the way up to the diff breather kit in the engine bay. So I'll trim it up once it's up in the engine bay. I'll know exactly then how much I needed. All you need to do is grab one end of it and press it into the push lock fitting you've installed on your diff. It's just a press fit, guys, and it will clip into place as soon as you press down on it, and it locks it in with jaws inside the fitting. Alrighty, that's done. So that's pressed into the fitting now, and it's not coming back out. I've made sure that it's got a good clamp by pulling back on it, and it's definitely not going anywhere. Got the other end of the hose here ready to take up the front of the vehicle. But first, what we need to do is make sure that we can get this hose from the diff to the chassis safely without having it too short. So when the diff flexes up and down, it's not going to stretch the cable and break it. So, call me crazy, but these brake lines are an extended braided brake line set that I've installed on the vehicle. Now I know that those lines is long enough for when the diff flexes all the way down, it's got enough length in it it's not going to break. So if I jump this cable from the breather fitting over onto the brake line and just cable tie it up along this brake line to the chassis, I know that if it's the same length as that, it's going to have enough length in it to flex with the diff. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. There we have it, guys, the rear diff breather line routed up along the brake line there, up to the chassis and up along the hard brake lines. Then it goes up there over the top of the fuel tank. Now I've come on the outside here. Now up in there's actually a factory bracket right there which houses the brake line. So I've just undone the 10mm bolt on the outside, put a little bit of conduit around the breather line there, as you can see, and just pinched it into a spot which was actually spare on that bracket. So that worked out really well. Then I've come down here, tucked down onto the inside of the chassis rail, and then continued to run along those brake lines there, the hard lines, cable tying it along the way, dropping down there, up here and over the chassis rail, and then I've just put the rest of the line up in the engine bay up there for now. Now a few tips: no matter which way that you route the cable up to the front of the vehicle, you need to make sure that it isn't going to rub through. So make sure it's not somewhere where it's going to have a moving part that might rub against it and cause it to break through this. Even though it's got a really thick quality wall on it, eventually you still could have some dramas. And the main thing, keep it away from heat. Okay, so that's the rear differential breather fitting location. Nice and easy to show you guys, heaps of space. The other three breathers though are a little bit harder to get camera angles of, so I'm going to overlay some images now and explain them in more detail. So this is a manual transfer case bolted to a manual transmission, and you can see the breather location there the hose going onto the fitting up the back of the transfer case. So that's much the same on the auto transfer case, as you can see here, the line going onto the breather fitting just behind the mating surface. So the breather lines on the manual transmission themselves are located right there. The top hose going into a fitting, the bottom hose is the one coming from the transfer case. They both run up to a fitting block on the bell housing, which is bolted on normally but hanging down there at the moment because there's no bolt in it. So the automatic transmission is very easy to see, clearly visible, the fitting location up the top there with the breather line going into it, and the bottom hose is the one coming from the transfer case. And those breather lines run up to a block on the front of the bell housing, much like the manual would have. Those pipes right there are the breathers for them. Okay, now this one here is the front differential, an exploded diagram of your front diff in your NP300, and you can see right there that is the breather fitting, guys. So straight into the side of the housing on the passenger side of the vehicle, nice and easy to get to. So that's pretty much the breather locations, the fitting locations of the other 3 spots on the vehicle, so the transfer case, transmission and front diff. Now what I'll do, guys, is I'll just cut back to the vehicle and I'll show you exactly how I'm going to put the breather line up to those fittings. We need to get some breather lines onto the transmission and transfer case. Now those images that I just overlaid for you and explained the fitting locations on both the automatic and manual transmission and transfer case, that at least shows you now where the fittings are. So this is one of the rubber lines off my transmission. I've pulled it off to show you guys what you can do as an option. So you can actually grab your pneumatic hose that's supplied in the Black Hawk kit and your factory rubber line, and you can just push the pneumatic hose inside the rubber line. It's actually a really snug fit, and you can even put a clamp around this after you're done if you like, to make sure that it's nice and tight around the pneumatic hose. But that's it, pushed in there. It's a really good fit, and I actually can't get that off. I did a test before and I could pull it apart, but it took a lot of force. So as you can see, that is a pretty snug fit, guys. Not a bad option, but me being OCD, I need to have everything nice and neat in one piece. So what I'm actually going to do, and I've done this before and I know it works, is you've got your pneumatic hose. I'm going to take a heat gun to the end of the pneumatic hose and I'm going to heat it up so that it's a little bit malleable and it will form. So then what I'll do is I'll push it over the fitting, the factory fittings on the transmission and transfer case, and as this pneumatic hose cools down, when it's pressed onto the fitting, it will actually form to the fitting and create a shrink fit. I've done a test for you guys here to try and show you what I'm talking about. So this is that breather block off the front of the bell housing, which I've removed because I was going to try and use it, but you can't because it's brazed together on the end here. So I've just heated up the pneumatic hose, pressed it over the other end of the fitting, and as you can see, that is not going anywhere. It is just so tight on there, guys. So that is what I'm going to do. That way I can get rid of the factory rubber hoses, which in my opinion are a little bit too loose on the fittings now, and I don't trust them. I'd probably put clamps on them if I was to leave them on there. So I'm just going to delete them and get rid of them altogether. And then I'll just run this up from the transfer case and the transmission up into the engine bay through the front. So up to the bell housing and then up into the engine bay from there. It takes a lot less pneumatic hose to do that. The transfer case fitting is there. So that's just coming off the transfer case up into that P-clip. And then there's another P-clip a little bit forward from that one, just there, which houses both the transmission and the transfer case line. So they start sort of jumping together there. You can see the transfer case one coming from the back and the transmission just looping over from the other side there into that P-clip. And then just runs over to the front of the bell housing, and then there's some electrical cable there with some conduit around it. So I've just basically cable tied the two pneumatic lines to that, and then from there I leave the cable, I leave the conduited cable just there, and I jump across over onto the same spot that the other lines are running to, and then just up into the top of the engine bay. If you're keeping things simple and you're connecting the pneumatic line up to the rubber line, you can connect it up to this rubber line in the engine bay from the front diff, like you did on the transfer case and the transmission. That's it right there, guys, right next to the battery tray. Probably the only diff breather that Nissan actually got right, because it's right up in the engine bay. Although it's not the highest point, it is still up in the engine bay. And it basically runs down there. So that's it there, which runs down to the front diff all the way down there. If you're heating things up though, you can grab your pneumatic air line that you have left over from all the other ones that we've already run, grab your heat gun and heat that bad boy up, press it onto the barb, run it up into the engine bay, and then all we need to do is connect those pneumatic lines up to the manifold and it is done. Now the good thing about the front diff in our vehicles, guys, in the NP300s and other IFS vehicles, independent front suspension, is the diff center is solid mounted to the chassis, which means that it doesn't move. So we don't have to have a heap of slack in this line. We can probably use the standard guides that this rubber hose runs through up into the engine bay. We can use those and then run it up to the manifold block. You can essentially do that however you want, but that's probably what I'll end up doing, and I'll show you once I'm done. So I was a little bit unsure as to what this coiled pneumatic line was for, but after reading the instruction manual, guys, this is actually a diff dropper coiled line. It doesn't really work for my application, but maybe for you guys that have like Nissan Patrols, Toyota Land Cruisers, this might work actually quite well. So it's basically a sprung pneumatic line, so when the diff drops down, it opens up and coils back together after the diff returns to its factory height. So, good to use, but not for my application. I just thought I'd let you guys know what it is and why it's in the kit. Nice and squishy. So there we have it on the front differential housing on the passenger side, just up the top there, guys. That is the pneumatic air line pressed onto the fitting on the factory housing, and that just runs straight up into the engine bay, kind of following the path of the original rubber line. So if you follow that up into the engine bay and then up to the breather block itself, you won't have any dramas, guys. Nice and simple. Again, just applying a little bit of heat to that pneumatic line and then pressing it on, and it's a form fitment now after it's cooled down. Went on nice and easily. So we're up in the engine bay, guys, and this is the manifold block right here that we fitted up before. We've got the 4 ports on top, the pneumatic fittings, and I've got 2 hoses over this side, the 2 pneumatic hoses that are already plumbed in. That is for the front and rear diff, so I've chopped them down, trimmed them down to size, and pushed them into the pneumatic fittings right there, so they're done. Now I've got the 2 lines here. This is for the transfer case and the transmissions. So I'll just have to trim these guys down, chop them about there, and then push them into the pneumatic fittings, and maybe just a couple more zip ties in the engine bay here, holding all of these hoses together and things like that, and that will then complete the installation of the breather kit. The breather kit is now on the vehicle. Pretty easy install, guys. I don't think there was anything really there that was too difficult. Maybe getting some of those pneumatic lines squeezed onto the factory fittings on the transfer case and transmission may have been a little bit of a stretch with the old arm trying to get up in there and push it on, but once they were on, it was really satisfying to know that I wasn't using any of that factory rubber line, which was loose on those fittings and probably not working anyway. So I can now safely put my NP300 through some puddles without risking intake of water into my drivetrain. So the install itself was pretty darn straightforward, guys. Definitely something that you need to do to your four-wheel drive if you're going to go four-wheel driving and put it through some water. Even if you don't think you're going to, you may. So it's best just to get one on the car. They're really inexpensive, guys. If you want to grab one for your car, you can jump on the Four-Wheel Drive Shed's website or give them a call in the office. The guys over there will help you out anything four-wheel drive related. They are on top of it, guys. They will get you sorted with everything that you need. Just a side note on this as well, it doesn't negate the fact for general servicing on your diffs and transmission and things like that, mainly your diff housings. Now, that wraps up this video, guys, but if you want to see more of this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It helps me make more of this content for you guys. And if you haven't already, if you enjoyed this video, drop it a thumbs up, guys. If you have any questions for me about this video, you can drop it in the comment section below.
And if there's any videos that you want to see me do that I haven't done yet, and it's something that you really want to see me do on this channel, drop it also in the comment section below, guys, and I'll see what I can do. Maybe I can make it happen, maybe I can't, but if I can, I will. Anyway guys, this has been another JPC Shed Sessions installation video. I'll catch you guys in the next one.
All right.